Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Debra Eckerling, a goal strategist and author of Your Goal Guide and 52 Secrets for Goal Setting and Goal Getting. You can't reach your goals on your own, you need your people. So every week I bring together 3 of my people to dive into a topic. And as it is DEBcember, that's when I start New Year, New You. We're talking today about identity. And I'm so excited for this fabulous conversation. We have with us Jeni Jonte, Angela Page, and Yuliya Patsay. And all 3 of these women, there was something about our conversations when I'm like, oh yes, you need to be on the identity goal chat. So it's something that I believe each of them holds very dear to who they are and what they do, which is, the point of identity. Before we jump in, I would love for each of them to introduce themselves. So Jeni, let's start with you. Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for letting me be here. I'm really excited to join this conversation with you guys. So I am a high performance mindset and prosperity coach. I primarily work with entrepreneurs and sales professionals or business leaders to really increase and improve their revenue, their results. And I have noticed that your self-image is at the core of one of the most important things that you can do to really change your results. So it's a huge part of what we focus on with our coaching.
Awesome. And I'm trying to remember, were you one of the people who I just met because someone said we needed to meet? Or were you at, I know you were at one of my meet and greets. So so this is, if we don't know each other, but you want to be a guest on Goal Chat, please reach out. I do this once a month, although skipping DEBcember. So let me know if you're interested, because you never know. And like I said, I bring, I said it in the upfront, I bring together my friends. So to be on my show, we need to meet so we can be friends, so you could be here. So really glad that you found me. I'm really excited to have you as part of the conversation. Angela, welcome. Great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too. Well, I'm Angela Page. I'm a writer, author, and film producer. In this life and previous life, I was in corporate for several decades. And I met Deb through Women's National Book Association when I was trolling around at the West Coast chapters. And now I'm the president of South Florida chapter of WNBA. And I have to say that I am a big fan of Deb. I think I've known her since Zoom during COVID. And I feel compelled to make sure that I'm networking every week and I have goals every week, and just dynamite, and really made a big change in my habits, I should say, my weekly habits, to be more organized. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for saying that. Yes, we have been friends since the virtual days. And I am, even though I live in LA, I am networking ambassador for the San Francisco chapter. And so it doesn't matter where you are in the world, we are always having these great either educational or meet and greet kinds of events. Going back to what I said on the offset, you can't meet your goals on your own, you need your people. And Angela, president of Florida, generously spearheaded an event, an all chapter event, for when my book 52 Secrets for Goal Setting and Goal Getting comes out in January. So toward the end of January, we are doing an all chapter Goalapalooza. So I will put that in the recap as well. And usually you and I chat in a group, so even this is a smaller setting than normal for us.
True. Yes. Yeah.
But really excited to have you, and especially as someone who's had so many professional identities. I know you've got so much to add to the conversation. So great to have you. Yuliya.
Hi.
I think no, it's not an I think. I know you were the person who inspired this conversation, because I also interviewed you for Taste Buds with Deb, and you were talking about the importance of identity. And I'm like, oh, that's perfect for Goal Chat. So please share who you are, and beyond inspiring the conversation, why you are here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Yuliya. It rhymes with Gulia. I know it looks scary, but it's actually completely phonetic. And I'm originally from the former Soviet Union, hence the name. Um, I am a storyteller and I tell stories on the page, on the stage, and in your ear. And the in your ear part is that I'm also a voice actor. So I do that. And a previous life was corporate marketing and communications. So that is also my background, Angela. And most recently, besides the fact that I wrote my book this year, Until the Last Pickle, besides the book, a lot of my work explores the themes of identity, belonging, bias, and creativity. Thank you for the plug. And then just for fun, most recently, I launched a really fun new offer, which is called Marketing Psychic. So I meet with people and I do a seance with them where they tell me about their product or their business or their personal brand. And then if the muse comes to me, and the muse usually does, I'm able to provide some kind of insight for them. And that has been a ton of fun. So that's my newest hat and identity is Marketing Psychic.
Okay, I love that. And when we did our conversation for Taste Buds with Zeb, I know that I did not know about you as the marketing psychic. Brand new. But what it really goes to show is we get to be whoever we want, right? And a big part of it is owning your gifts and sharing them with the world. So I think you demoed something I am certain we will get into more in the conversation. Yeah. I feel though like we should start with the basic question, not to be boring, but what is identity? Yuliya, do you want to start us off with that one?
Well, I actually think that identity is a very fluid, socially constructed concept where there are parts of who you are that are visible to other people that then become what you associate with yourself. But even that can change from place to place. So case in point, in the former Soviet Union, I had an ethnic identity that was a huge part of my experience that in the United States, I could pretend didn't exist. So things like that. And then I would say it's also what you claim for yourself.
Well, the second one I can definitely relate to. For you though, has your identity really changed, or is it you have evolved?
No, I really think as far as what society tells you is true, there really are aspects of my sort of ethnic background that were very conspicuous in one place and less so in the United States.
And the fact that you can identify that, I think really helps you lean in to that identity piece.
Yeah. So it's a choice and something you can claim as well.
Love it. Okay, Jeni, what do you think?
Yeah, so I like to look at it. I mean, there's always going to be society's view on what they see you as, right? Like how they're labeling you or whatever you want to look at it as. But I focus more on myself, right? And how I see myself, my own self-image. So I have a previous life as well as a physical therapist. And so like for me to, sorry, dry here. For me to really get, the most out of it and start to have really good results with my coaching business, I had to change my own self-image, my own self-identity of who I was. Because if I just kept seeing myself as a physical therapist, and who am I to think that I could help somebody in this realm, even though, as a PT, you're helping people as well, just in kind of a different context. So being able to, change your own identity from within and then stepping into that, I think is one of the hugest game changers for being able to get the results you want.
Got it. And as someone, Deb method starts with determine your mission. To get what you want, you need to know what that is. And it does start with knowing who you are. So I am completely on board with that. Angela, how do you define identity?
Well, I would say it's linked to, reinventing yourself so many times. You start out almost a blank slate to some extent. Obviously, you've got what you're born into, your family, and where you're born in. But of course, as in my case, I've lived all over the world. I lived in Asia, Europe, Latin America, and also traveling around, living in parts of the U.S. Even living in the U.S., you hit different cultures, and it all shapes you. So I think you start out more or less a blank slate to some extent. And as you get jobs, and in my case, I've been married multiple times and lived in different places, and it's shaped me all the way through. Everything has left a mark, and I have, as I reinvented myself in different careers and interests, I've gained expanded identity, I would call it. Makes sense?
It does. And you kind of jumped ahead to my next question, which is, how does identity change? So do you want to talk a little bit more about personally and
Sure.
professionally, how that change has worked for you?
Absolutely. My first overseas experience was in Hong Kong. And I had very little, I didn't even know where it was. I had to actually look at it on the map in the airplane to see where it was while I was on my way there, because I was joining my then husband, who was transferred there to work. And I was so changed by that experience, because at that time there were not a lot of foreigners in Hong Kong. So I was like, being a Western, white female, I was a minority. And I would say to everybody, you need to be in a place as a minority once in your life to really understand what it's like. And that really was a game changer for me. And I looked at the world very differently after that. And then I went to Europe and lived in London and then in Copenhagen and traveled a lot in Southern Europe. And of course, that's another experience, and followed by traveling a lot and working in South America. So, I was raised bilingual in Spanish and from a Hispanic family. And so that also was an exploration. And sometimes you go back and explore different identities that you may have had earlier, and it brings a different level. So I think as you study, as you get married or not, or have partners, it really does start to add layers. It's just a lot of layers, and it's all good, because you can draw from that in the future.
And this is part of the joy of me having these conversations, because you and I have known each other, virtual land, for since the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
I knew nothing. I knew none of this.
Okay.
And it really just shows that you don't have to be showcasing your past all the time. It's there. It is part of who you are, and we'll use the word again, identities. So
yes, I don't want to be braggadocious, so I just keep it really low key to some extent, unless it comes up in conversation. Then I'll say, yeah, I live there, or I live there, or whatever, or I was married to that kind of a guy, or whatever. So,
and I don't even know that it's low key. I'm not at all surprised knowing who you are, that you had this wide, vast, international background. But it's still really cool when you get to hear the details about how you became this particular version of you.
Yes.
So, Jeni, what are your thoughts? And I think everybody on this call has been on this conversation has been multiple people career-wise. How do you believe identity changed, or how has it changed for you?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Just you evolving and changing over time with all of your different experiences that you've had. And then also, if you actually set out and make the change for yourself, think about the person that you want to become and then work to become that person. So, that's one of the things that I work on a lot with my clients is, so they set their goals, they have their goals, but then they have to see, okay, so who do I need to be to have that goal? And then how do you become the person that you want to be? So you can look at attributes of other people or whatever it is that you really admire. And you're like, I love that person's patience, their persistence, or their personal, whatever little bits that you really want to incorporate into the type of person that you really want to evolve into. So I think there's a little bit of both, and it's taken me a long time to get to that. I think I kind of let it happen to me for pretty much most of my life until the last couple of years. And now I'm finally taking charge myself of who I want to be and how I want that to look and what type of a person I want to be and how I want others to see me now as my successful business and as a coach, and not just as my previous roles and all of my other many roles that I have.
One thing that I also frequently say, being of the golosphere, is, when you're faced with change, you have two choices. You can run and hide, or you can embrace it. And whether the change is by choice or circumstance, the more you embrace it, the more you welcome it, the more successful you are going to be. And that starts with deciding which you is going to be out there embracing the world. So very good point. And Yuliya, you obviously have the most overt example of identity change, but what about your experience with others? How have you seen from your lens?
Yeah. I think one way to look at it is identity changes as your tastes change or your preferences. So perhaps one day you discover that, or like I did, we went on a family trip and there was a hiking option to do it. And I did this hiking option. And that's when I found out, oh my goodness, I love hiking. And so my identity now includes hiker, or if this isn't a particular example for me, but if somebody, has an identity like they're a smoker and then chooses to give that up, they are now a non-smoker, and that's part of their identity and who they are. So I think like as tastes change and develop and as your experiences do, that does as well. But back to the example that I gave the first time around, another one is when I immigrated, the country that I was immigrating from was the Soviet Union. And that country was in the process of changing and separating from the Union and becoming Ukraine. And so for me, when I think of that identity, I've gone from identifying as from the former Soviet Union to, well, technically from Ukraine. And yet there was no need for a distinction until the global situation necessitated for there to be a change. So once again, there's an element of an outside force that changes your identity, or at least your relationship to it.
Yes. Well, I think of the panel, you probably or definitely has had the most change thrust upon you. In all of our experiences, both personal and professional, because it's so important to look at your personal life and your goals as well as, your professional experiences, because all of the parts make us up. Is there, I'm going to ask a different question first. If you had to choose one word, or, okay, you could have 1 to 3 words that you use as your identity, what are those words?
Ooh, those are tough questions.
And you want a funny one? Black widow, because I've lost 3 partners, husbands and partners, in the last a couple decades. So I guess a black widow. Yeah, 3 of them. One is only left alive. 3 of them are dead. Yeah, not all on my watch.
Wait, so okay, how do you embrace this?
Well,
because again, it's something I did not expect as an answer, but let's go with that.
It was named that by my mother's boyfriend. Came to the airport to pick me up after the last death, and he had Black Widow limousine, like a placard in the airport, greeting us in the airport, and that's where it stuck. So the name stuck at that point. So anyway, it's tough. I mean, it's not, it's funny, but it's not funny. You know what I mean?
I was going to ask, how do you embrace such a dark moniker?
Well, I think because I was there for two of them. It prepares you. It actually, I don't fear death. I didn't, when I had, as I said, told you earlier that I had my mother in hospice, and this is back in July, that I was very prepared, for what was going to happen. I mean, intellectually, obviously, emotionally is very different, but it gives you a skill set that, like, I guess, like what they call those, the death doulas, right?
Mhm.
It's a death doula. Now they have a name for it, but 30 years ago they didn't have it. Didn't exist. So now I guess I'm, for lack of a better word, I became without wanting, a trained death doula.
Now, this may be a moniker that you have.
Right.
What moniker do you want?
Not that.
Not that one.
It's kind of like a downer for dating, I guess, because so I got to keep that real quiet, and and although it's a funny thing to bring up, and kind of, but it is kind of like a wet blanket, I guess, if you're going to go dating again. So I got to keep it. I just have to say I'm just a writer and a producer, and leave it at that, and let them discover through whatever trial and error my past. So.
Well, let's go with that. So the next time you are asked this question, your identity is that of a writer producer. I think. Right. Yes. I think for the purposes of the conversation, it was fine that you shared the other, but definitely writer producer. Right. It embodies, though, because from what I know from you, all of your projects involve one or the other. So it really is. Correct. They're titles, but they're more than titles for you and who you are. Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yuliya, do you have your answer?
Well, the thing that I have embraced, I only need one word, because the thing that I've embraced over the years is storyteller. And it's so all-encompassing and feels so true to me. I do a lot of different things: acting, speaking, writing, coaching, like all of those things, but they all feel very restrictive to me, and I don't feel like I can fully be myself in all of them. But storyteller encompasses everything I do, but also just everything who I naturally am, as far back as I can remember being a little kid and making up stories and writing plays and telling tall tales and writing poetry, and just the way that I interact with the world is through, metaphor and like this part's exposition. And that's just how I understand life. So that, I would say, is probably my biggest identity. The others would have to be, just other people have given me, which is empathetic and humorous. So a lot of people point out, today I've been terribly unfunny, but normally I crack people up, and that's a big part of it. My grandmother in particular, in Russian, the word for like sort of performer is artist. And so anytime I do anything, especially if I'm making her laugh, she'll be like, "Oh, artist," because that's the art form is sort of storytelling and entertaining. Yeah. So she's my biggest fan.
I love that. But so your identity and the identity that you spread out to the world, they're one and the same.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And that cohesion has only come together just very recently, in the last year or two, I think.
Amazing. So Jeni, what is your identity, and does it match?
I don't know what other people would say. I had a couple of thoughts. So one, just generally speaking, I would say encourager. That kind of has always been me, kind of a big cheerleader for people. I can see their potential. I believe in them. I get really excited for them. And that's something, even as a PT, a lot of my patients would always say, like, I really appreciate your encouragement and your belief in me. And I think it's just really exciting to see people be able to, meet that potential and amaze themselves. And I just like to be right alongside them, encouraging them all along the way. But I was thinking too, because so I write out my own like self-image script, like I was talking about, and it always at the top of it is actually child of God, because that is how, for myself, how I identify myself, and reminds me of my connection, my divine heritage, my spirit. And so that's just kind of a big part of me and myself.
Well, we are multiple parts because we are complex. And as a fellow cheerleader, I totally get the value and the role of the encourager, because people need that, especially in the crazy world in which we live. If we do not have joy, we have nothing. So we need all of the good to counteract. And going back to what Yuliya was saying, because I also am multiple people, goal strategist, author, workshop leader, book proposal specialist, all the different things that I do. But I go under the banner of Goal Setting Simplified, goals cheerleader, because it does all of the projects that I do, my books, my shows, my everything is all about giving people the tools they need to make their lives better, and to do so through goals. So I'm a big fan of the umbrella, and the bigger the umbrella, the better, if you need it for embracing who you are and what you share with the world.
Can I ask you, Deb, were you a real cheerleader? Did I hear that correctly?
No, I was not. Can you believe this?
No,
I did. I did try out for pom-poms in 8th grade.
Okay.
I did. And I was probably one of the last people to try out. So I spent the 2 hours practicing. So when it became time for the audition, nap time or whatever. But the other thing that I did for fun in a high school, and actually all through college, was competitive public speaking.
Oh.
And so that is the way that I cheer. When you have your voice, when you can communicate effectively through the written and the spoken word, you can do anything. And because of that, I think those jobs have really served me just as well as had I competed in a sport, air quotes, such as cheerleading. So it brings about a really good question. So what from your childhood is the most indicative of your identity today? Is there something that stands out?
Dysfunctional family is huge fodder for my work, my written work. Absolutely. And in a rich family history besides the dysfunction. So I don't think I'd be who I am without it. I kick around this a lot, but that's definitely, if I had been from a very calm and predictive, middle class family in the suburbs, I probably wouldn't have all this material to read about.
That's a really good spin on challenging times. I love that.
Yeah.
And what about you, Jeni? Is there some experience from growing up that you think led to you being?
I think I just always have been a more positive, look on the bright side kind of person. Everything's going to work out. You just keep trying. And I think I've just continued with that throughout, and always just kind of a hard worker. Like once I found something that I cared about, then I was willing to put in however many hours I needed to make sure that I got to my goals. Speaking of goals, so.
Well, hard work and a positive attitude is what you need to do what you're doing. So I think even though it feels like not concrete, I think those are probably really the best kinds of attributes to take from your youth into your current self. Yuliya?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just echo everything Angela said, because thank you for my upbringing and my life experiences, because I really wouldn't have anything to write about. And actually, just as I was thinking, gosh, nothing interesting ever happens, I had a really outrageous set of circumstances that happened after the birth of my second daughter, which will make a great book one day. But sometimes you're like, okay, universe, be careful what you wish for, because I wished for something interesting and boy, did I get it. But the experience that's the most indicative of like my identity is, I mentioned this as a kid, I was always doing something related to stories. And right around the time I was 5, I decided to write a play one afternoon. And I wrote a play, Act 1, and I created these little, it was about hedgehogs. So I created these hedgehogs out of like clay and little like matchsticks that I made. And I invited my family for a performance. We lived with like 13 other people. So everybody was invited to our communal living space to watch this performance. And I'd created Act 1, and then I was like, I'll get to Act 2 and I'll just wing it. So all of that is very indicative to how I am and how I work. Like there's usually only enough in me for like this much focus, and I get in there and I do it, and then I'll figure out the rest later. So like all of that is still with me. But now I have a little bit more help for my obvious ADHD, so I can get through things a little bit better.
I want to hear, was your grandmother Yuliya there to witness this 5-year-old play?
I cannot remember, because all I can remember is my parents' critical analysis, which, as we said,
I love that. But do that thing, artiste.
Yeah. I'll ask her. I'll ask her if she remembers this.
Yes,
if it's possible that she remembers this. Yeah.
So what about you?
What?
What about you, Deb?
Oh, I led with mine, the talker. I was all, and I did go through a quiet phase. Luckily, it didn't last too long, but just this love of talking and being with people, and who knew that would lead to this? I mean, and I'm blessed because I meet amazing people all the time, and I get to highlight them and share what they love. And I've been a writer since, forever as well. So doing it through articles, I wrote this in my bio in the new book, as much as I love to write, I love to talk even more. And leading workshops and hosting my podcast, that brings me so much joy, because I get to chat with people and give them a platform to share who they are and what they love to do. So, yeah.
So you were a talker from the time you were a little kid?
I really was.
They used to call that obnoxious. Do you know that, right?
Yeah, not in my house. No, well, I was raised by an artist mother who was always very, and I always refer to her as the cheerleader's cheerleader.
Okay.
Who was very big on, develop who you are and what you love. And was it 27 years ago? We packed up 2 cars and moved cross country and tailgate to LA. So, I was very fortunate to have an amazing mother who encouraged and supported everything I did. But yeah, she was, be who you are. I heard stories about when I was 3, sending my mother and my grandmother out of the dressing room. I said, I have someone to help me. So yeah, young Deb and current Deb definitely have
already on it. Yeah.
Similar personalities. When I want to know what these words mean to you, because I don't think it applies to either of you. If it does, correct me. But identity crisis, people have them. Why, and what are your recommendations to get through it?
Well, for myself, I think the biggest identity crisis that I experienced was becoming a mom. And that was really confusing for quite some time. It sort of changed things I knew to be true about myself. Like I used to be somebody who could keep all the schedules and everything in my head, and was really, really organized and like really on top of it. It was just like naturally who I've always been. And then once motherhood came into the picture and kind of scrambled my brain a little bit, yeah, it took a really long time to figure out, well, who am I now that there's this new role that is so demanding? So that would be probably my biggest relationship to it. And then the other one, like very cliche, but I definitely had a quarter life crisis as well. Like that was a real thing that happened right around 26, 27, which is coincidentally when I also became a mom. But they were a little bit different, those flavors. It was like, well, who am I now that I'm a mom? But also like, who am I? Like, what is my purpose? What is my bigger like purpose on this planet? So I've had it. I've had that happen.
Oh, well, we'll go into fixing it in a minute. After we hear from Jeni and then Angela about have you ever had one of these and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, I don't know if I had any like full blown, but just that example I gave earlier when I was, transitioning from the world of physical therapy into the coaching world, that it took me a while to really make that full transition. There was a lot of what will people think. I, spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on my education. Am I throwing it all in the tubes? And so there was a lot of uneasiness, a lot of like worry and fear of, is this the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? But I think once I realized that I needed to act in line with what I felt and what I resonated with, and that just was the path I needed to be taking, then it started to get a lot better. But that was probably my biggest moment of like, oh gosh. But I realized too, the more people I talk to, like we go through all this schooling, but we come out not really knowing who we are. And it seems like something we kind of figure out along the way. And I think it would be wonderful if we could incorporate more of this kind of information throughout regular, K-12 schoolings, that when you come out, you know more about yourself, which I think is so important when you're heading out into the world, instead of like, as a win, figuring out as you go, like, oh, maybe that wasn't the right choice, 10 years later. But I just think that's something that we all need to spend a little more time with ourselves to figure out.
And if you think of this though, the baby boomers, they had one job forever, and their parents and their parents. I identify as Generation Xer, so I probably had several different careers alongside the Deb as a writer, speaker, author, workshop leader identity. So I think that in the previous generations, it was always you do one thing mostly forever, unless you were the exception. Now doing one thing is more the exception. And I love that we live in this, especially with technology and education and availability. The world really is everyone's oyster, but I don't know, and I don't have kids, and I am not one. See, as a Generation Xer, apparently I'm not one anymore. But I would think that kids today almost, I don't want to say have too many choices, but I believe, and again, basing this on nothing, is they go into their career realizing that that it doesn't have to be permanent. And maybe that is its own challenge in being able to try one thing and be able to jump over and over.
Yes. And then there's not a level of commitment, I don't think, as much if you're like, oh, I'll just try this for a little while. And
we're just going to swipe right or swipe left. That's what we're going to
do. So I'm with you. I think kids today, they need to really, and my mission is to change goal culture in and out of the workplace, have people embrace goals as intention, who they are and what they want to contribute, not only to themselves, but their workplace and the world. And that piece, when you know who you are, it's easy to make the other decisions. So maybe that is the missing link. It's not that there are too many options. Maybe there's too much noise and not enough quiet to figure out the identity that they want to carry forward, at least for phase next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I think we just solved the world's education problems. You're welcome, universe. Angela, what do you think? And what do the words identity crisis mean to you?
Well, I think in my experience, people coming from multicultural, multi-ethnic backgrounds sometimes have a hard time with this in their early years, and it takes them a while to sort it out. In my case, I came from I call it a religious identity crisis at a young age, because I had half my family, my father's side were all Italian Catholics, and my mother's side were atheists and anarchists. And so I didn't understand any of this, and I heard the stories and I heard why from there, but it took me probably into my late 20s when I did research on what was going on in Southern Europe and around the turn of the 19th, 20th century, that they weren't an anomaly. There was millions of laborers and, working class that were anti-clerical and against the church, because at the time they weren't being supported by the church with their long working hours, and that's where it came from on one side. And my grandfather was raised by a corrupt Jesuit priest in Peru, and those stories. So it gave me, of course, a lot of fodder for writing. But personally, I didn't understand any of this until I actually had to go and research and read about what was going on in their lives and the social and political events of the time, basically around the turn of the 20th century. And I lived with these people. I lived with my grandparents, and that's where I became bilingual. And so, but with that came a lot of searching myself as to why they were the way they were, and that it was not unusual. And from where they came from.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Wow.
Yeah.
So what recommendations do you have for people going through identity crisis, and maybe crisis, we don't even need that strong of a word. People who are unsure of their identity or want to enhance their identity, what are some things that they can do? And I'm going to start with Jeni on this, because I'm guessing you've got thoughts.
I do. I just think, first, I think you need to spend some time with yourself. Like, carve out some quiet time where you can actually sit and really reflect on, the things that you care the most about, the things that you resonate the most with. So if it's, career, if it's a relationship, if it's just internal, how you feel like you are portraying yourself to the world or how other people are seeing you, whatever the area is where you're not feeling like you're aligned, you need to sit down and figure out why that is and where you should be going next. Because if you don't spend time to figure out what it is that you're not feeling aligned with, then you cannot fix it. And once you do, then you can set out, so like for me, again, if it's the career, then I can sit down and really think about, what do I really want? And who do I really want to serve? And how do I really want to serve them? And then, write out my whole script and like how I want to be and the type of person I want to be so that I can step into this role. And then, over time and repetition, that uneasiness fades away as you feel more and more confident stepping into the new identity or the new way that you want to live your life. I think it comes up the most when your desires are to do something that you're not doing, in whatever realm that might be of your life. So something is not lining up.
I agree 200,000 gazillion% with you on that. One of my ongoing catchphrases is you can't get what you want unless you know what that is. And spending that, gifting yourself the time to figure out who you are is necessary to go to the next step to figure out what you want from life. So, absolutely. Angela, what are ways people can embrace and enhance their identity?
I think making peace with it in many cases, like I had to do, right? And knowing where you came from, what's enhancing, in your life, and understanding what positives there are, because a lot of people who've got issues with identity are finding conflicts So I think you need to work through it and find the advantages of being, multicultural or ethnic or whatever, and all your experiences, and work with it and take the good stuff. And that's where you can create your goals at that point.
I was going to ask you how you make peace with it, but I think you answered it. It's find the advantages and incorporate them and get rid of the muck, right?
Right. Absolutely. No conflicts, and look to see where and process and move on. And that's easy to say, but that's what I had to do, was process and move on from the dysfunction, from the this multi fractured situation with the religious issue, reconciling all of that, and through processing and moving on was my way of being able to achieve my goals, little by little, and not be dragged down by it, because that's a lot of people do have an issue. If they have identity crisis, it'll drag them down and not be able to achieve anything, or at least their goals.
Right. People stop themselves, I think, more so. And you're a screenwriter, you know this. In a script, there's always some physical barrier from the hero reaching their destination.
Right.
But there's also the emotional barrier. I mean, if the script's written right. But in real life, the barricades aren't always things that you can see. Sometimes it is actually you.
Right. Get out of your own way, right? Is that the place for that? Yeah.
Yuliya.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. First of all, great advice already that I totally agree with. The other thing that really helped me with the quarter life crisis was exploring possibilities and paths that I hadn't yet been exposed to. So I had gone from this, the way that we're educated is as if we still live in the world that the boomers came from, which is you grow, you go to school, you do well in school, you go to college, you get a good job, and you stay there, and then you get a pension, then you retire. But that's not really the world that I inherited. So I did really, really well in this structured, you've got this many choices, and from there, please make your selection. So then when I got out of that construct and into the real world, where I was like, wait, where's my manual? I need to go through it and make my choices. That doesn't exist. So I started looking at sort of alternative ways of living and being and doing. I found this conference. It was called the World Domination Summit, which was not kinky at all. It was just, but they had to do a lot of explaining around that. But the tagline for the conference was how to live a remarkable life in a conventional world. And it really just brought all these people together that were doing things that were unconventional, digital nomads, and not, now that's like a thing everybody knows, but not back then. So just people doing all kinds of really creative, like, oh, I left my corporate job and now I do this thing called midnight brunch, where I invite strangers and curate a brunch in my home, and all kinds of really interesting things. Brene Brown spoke at that conference. And when I saw her on stage, that's when I realized, oh, I want that. And what is that? And she's up there connecting with an audience and telling a story and sharing a perspective. And I hadn't been exposed to that in my previous career options that were, doctor, lawyer, engineer, or in the case of woman, accountant, as us immigrant children are presented with. Like, here are your options. And it wasn't one of those. So that's my advice, is get out there and seek out non-traditional paths and talk to people whose life is interesting.
And you Californians are the masters at that, because
we really are.
You were the ones that invented unconventional. You invented the term, because we always, East Coasters, we always, would laugh at it. I mean, that was the fodder for comedians about all the different, new jobs and occupations and interests that people had, where the old thing about, the joke about getting a degree in basket weaving came from California. I think you guys ever hear that one? We used to
absolutely. Underwater right. Basket weaving, actually.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying the course.
I mean, thank you, West Coasters, for that, because
Well, we really are. And so I'm in LA and Yuliya's in San Francisco, but we really are this where the heck and entertainment and business meet and creativity.
right.
I mean, we get all the good stuff, and we're very big fans of disruption and figuring out, if we solve our problem, someone else has that problem too, and doing good in the world. I'll phrase it, the D and the Deb method is determine your mission. So what you do in the world is not just about you. It is what you do to help others. And it could be to inform, it could be to entertain, it could be a business, a product, a service, but we're all here to help. And when you do something that helps others, you inevitably elevate yourself.
I have to say that's very true. And I go to these events now, because it used to be virtual, but now in person. And I always go, and if I said to you something, I don't know whether I'm going for myself, it's going to help me, or I'm drawn to this to help somebody else. And you just have to accept that, and it's not, but at least you're giving back, as you said. But that's the attitude that I go to at these events, especially I walk away saying, well, maybe I helped somebody today.
Which is the only way to approach the world, right? To do it well, yes, we always want to get more readers or more clients or whatever, but the people that you meet aren't necessarily your clients and readers. But when you bring someone else into your tribe, you become a part of theirs. Yeah. And again, we're all in this together. Kumbaya, yay, team. And what a better place to be of support is in helping people claim, reclaim, or enhance their identity. At this point, I would love for each of you to gift a goal to the audience. So what is something that they can do today, tomorrow, immediately to get on board the identity train? I'm sorry, I didn't have a better way to say that. Jeni, what goal would you like to gift?
Sorry. Excuse me. Okay, I would say to sit down and to write out. So I call it a self-image script, or your identity script, whatever you want to call it. And just take some time and write out all of the things in present tense form. Like, I am powerful, I am successful, I am whatever it is that you want to be. Take a few minutes to write that out, and then start reading it every single day until you become that person.
Ooh, positive affirmations. I love it. And read it out loud, because that's how you claim it, right?
Yes. Repetition is key.
Awesome. Love that. Angela, what goal are you gifting?
I'm gifting the goal to tell people, reach back into your family or even close friends, dead or alive, to see what traits, especially family, what traits did they impart on you that make you who you are today, and whatever it was, courage or hope or peace, and embrace that and make that part of your being, and thank them for it as well.
Okay. I like that. I can be good with the embracing in all of the parts, not just the good ones. Sometimes
That's
stubborn.
true. Right.
Yeah, well, sometimes stubborn isn't necessarily a good attribute, but it is a great quality to have, because it helps you become who you want to become.
Good and bad. Yes, I don't want to go dark, but I could say that.
And I don't even think of it as dark. It's just they're all parts of who you are, and even the ones that might have negative connotation, they're helpful. I mean, and I'm sure Yuliya after her quarter life crisis, there are certain attributes that you took from that might, I don't want to say be frowned upon, as women don't act that way. Women are, that old mentality. But these are the attributes you use to move forward and embrace next phase of your life. Am I close?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
I have a different goal for you guys, though.
Excellent. No, I was just using,
Oh, yeah,
I was just
yeah.
making an example
That's good
out of you.
stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yuliya.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So as a voice actor, and I've been a working voice actor for the last 4 years, what I've realized is that our voice is just a truth telling instrument. It doesn't lie. It's really not capable. So one of the things that I would encourage is to pay attention to your voice when you are talking to people or about something. If you can sort of feel, in my body, it just feels like a channel that goes up and down. That's very like, literally, I feel aligned when I am speaking my truth, when I'm getting like into that deep knowing voice. That sounds different than if I'm putting on an excited voice, or there's just a authenticity to it that you can feel. And so pay attention to that inner voice that comes out. What people bring it out of you, what things are you talking about that bring it out of you, that sort of quiet inner knowing. That sounds really different. Like, do y'all remember when Tom Cruise went on Oprah and started jumping around the couch?
Yes.
It's the opposite of that. So not that, because he's trying to convince himself or us. But when we know and are speaking our truth, we feel it differently in our bodies. We sound different. So that's my tip on embracing the who you actually are moment.
It is so true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We know. And it goes back to the whole thing with goals in your path. You know when you are happy, you know when you are miserable. Listen to it and bring into your life more happy, and do what you can to eliminate the miserable.
Mm-hmm.
I think we went way deeper and on so many different tangents than I ever could have imagined. So thank you all for bringing that out today. Where can people learn more about you and how you share your identity with the world? Jeni, where's the best place for people to find you?
Yeah, so here on LinkedIn, or if you go to www.bringonpossible.com, that one has the links to everything.
Bringonpossible.com. Okay, great. And Angela?
Well, I'm on Facebook, and also I'm on Blue Sky now. That, by the way, now, and it's actually just Angela Page on Blue Sky. I got my whole name without anything else on it, and I know, pretty good. Our https://angelapage.net is my website.
Excellent. And Yuliya?
Oh gosh, I'm so available. People can totally find me. They can find me on my website, yuliyapatsay.com. They can find me on Instagram, also just Yuliya Patsay. I'm on LinkedIn some of the time, not the best platform for now, but we'll see what I can do about that. And then if they'd like, my Substack is Buckle Up Boobala, and that's a great way to stay in my world and listen to the things that I have to say.
That's awesome.
At your own peril, of course. That's always the disclaimer.
And I am at the Deb Method everywhere, including Blue Sky, although I'm just starting to play on it a little bit more. And you can go to thedebmethod.com/plug to read the recap, read the goals, get the links, and I give everybody's LinkedIn link as well as the link to their website, so you can grab it there as well. And I am live every Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And then it magically turns into an episode of the GoalChat podcast, which is part of the Marketing Podcast Network, which you could subscribe to on your favorite podcast platform. And if you need a little extra nudge towards your goals, you can grab a copy of your goal guide, a roadmap for setting, planning, and achieving your goals at your favorite place to buy books. Or you can pre-order your copy of 52 Secrets for Goal Setting and Goal Getting, which is out on January 14th of 2025. Can you believe
I know.
2025 is like,
Yeah.
we'll be
January
here.
14th is the best date because it's also my book anniversary date too. So great job.
Would you believe
Books
it
are
is
fun.
also the day that your goal guide came out?
Oh my goodness.
Because of the leap years.
Twinsies.
Yeah.
My books are twinsies 5 years apart. So
Amazing.
you gotta love that. Such a fun, insightful, but really introspective conversation about identity. What final thought do you want to leave people with today, Yuliya?
Fake it till you make it. You see this beautiful wall behind me? This just definitely gives the illusion that I am a goal getter.
Well, are you not?
Well, it depends on who you ask. You want to ask my immigrant parents? Let me tell you.
I think we call that work in progress, but I
There
love
we
it.
are. Fake it till you
Thank
make it,
you.
friends.
Thank you. And Angela, final thought?
Go for it. You don't want to end up in the assisted living singing Beatles songs or whatever you listened to as a kid. Just do it.
Okay, wait. You're going to have to explain how Go For It keeps you out of the nursing home.
No, not out of it. So that if you end up in the assisted living, you don't want to say woulda, shoulda, coulda, right?
Okay, that's better. Okay,
no woulda, shoulda, couldas. Yeah,
got
you
it.
don't want to face that. Yeah, that's my anthem. Yeah, definitely.
And you'll see it's also how I end the show, but we'll get there in a couple minutes. Jeni, final thought.
I would just say you can never outperform your self-image. So it's aligned with whatever goal you are trying to achieve.
Ooh. That's
Good.
a good
For
one.
that.
One too.
No, I like that. Because and so next week, the second part of our Yay, it's DEBcember, start 2025 now. We're talking about persona. So so this week we're doing the internal. Next week is what you're presenting on the world, and definitely overlap between both of them. But I kind of loved having the yin and yang of that for my DEBcember shows. So you have control over your life. So take that control and make it that one that you deserve and desire. Thank you so much, Jeni, Angela, and Yuliya, for joining me today. Thank you for tuning in to GoalChat, whether you're watching us live, the replay, or listening to us as the GoalChat podcast. Your identity is yours and yours alone. So embrace it and use it to create and live the best life that you can. Go on out there and go for it, because we know you can do it.